Hi friends, this is Tech Expert Neil and you are watching howisolve.com. In today's video, I'll show you how you can install drivers after a fresh Windows installation. Or if you want to install a particular driver for your device which is not functioning, this can be used for that purpose also. I'll show you the installation process step by step as usual. We'll cover how to install using exe file and how to manually install a driver, as well as how to install Windows 7 based drivers on a Windows 11 system or 10 system. So without wasting much time, let's get started. So this is my desktop and now we'll start the process for driver installation. Assume that this is a freshly installed Windows system. So now there are two cases where you have got a laptop or a pre-built desktop machine, or if you have got a desktop machine which you have built on your own. So in those two cases, the way we install drivers will be a bit different. If you have got a laptop or a pre-built branded desktop, in that case we just require the model number for your particular system. So to do that, we'll head to our run and we'll type system information, and this particular window will pop up. And in this over here, we are interested in over here system model. This particular model number will show you the particular brand. If you see system manufacturer, since this is a desktop machine, in my case this information is not relevant for driver installation. If you have got a laptop or a pre-built desktop, then the system manufacturer and the system model will help you to find a location for downloading your drivers for a particular device. If you've got an assembled system, so we'll note down the motherboard's model number. To get the motherboard's model number, head down over here, and over here you will see the baseboard manufacturer. In this case, I've got an MSI board, so here it's written MicroStar International, and the particular model of the motherboard is B450 Tomahawk Max 2, as you can see over here. So this will allow us to find the drivers for this particular motherboard. And apart from the motherboard, you have to also identify other components that are present in your device. That is, if you are installing drivers for a desktop system that you have built by third party, it is not a branded desktop. So in that case, once the motherboard has been identified, the other important parts are the graphic card and the processor. You can see the processor information mentioned over here. It's an AMD Ryzen 7 3700X processor. And the graphic cards, you simply have to go over here and click on components, and then in display, click on display, and here you can see this is the graphic card for my particular system. It's an NVIDIA graphic card, GeForce GTX 1660 Super, and all this information you should note down, because we'll be searching for these particular drivers using this particular model numbers. So we have got the graphic card information, CPU information, motherboard information. Apart from that, your network card will also be mentioned over here. If you go in network and then click on adapter, here you can see over here, if you scroll down, you have to skip the virtual network adapters. So like all these Microsoft network adapters, WAN, mini port, these are not the actual physical network adapters. These are virtual network adapters. The real network adapter, that is for my LAN, is mentioned over here. You can see over here, this is Realtek PCI. So this is my adapter, network adapter. Since this is a desktop system, it does not have a Wi-Fi adapter to it. And this particular network adapter is not added as a card. This is pre-built in the motherboard. So with the drivers for this will be packed with the motherboard drivers itself. So we need to search for this particular driver separately. In my case, in your case it might be different. If you have got an external network card, then in that case you have to download the drivers using this particular model number mentioned over here. And if you have got a printer, then the printer details will be mentioned in the printing section. You can see these are the drivers currently installed. I use multiple printers. You can see Canon, Epson. So all these model number and manufacturer details are important to download the drivers. Always download the drivers from the system manufacturer. Do not go to third-party websites to download drivers, because in most cases those sites are spammy and they have tons of ads, and the drivers that they ship are not reliable, and they will cause problems if you try to install them. So I would suggest always go to the system manufacturers or the OEM original equipment manufacturer's website to download the drivers. The only case where you'll need to download drivers from a third party site is where your drivers are not available with the system manufacturer. That is usually the case when the device is quite old and the system manufacturer either has shut that shop or the device is outdated, extremely outdated device. In that case, the system manufacturer no longer provides the download links for that particular device. Okay, so once we have got the drivers for your display, network, and if you have got a, you can see if there are any USB devices, these will be mentioned over here in the USB section. In my case, there is no separate USB device. These are just graphic card USB ports. The drivers for this will be shipped with the graphic card, and this is from the CPU motherboard. This will come with the chipset drivers. So in case you have got any other USB device connected to your system, the details will be mentioned over here. Again, if there's some serial or parallel devices connected to a serial port and the parallel port, then it will be listed over here. If there are any input devices like keyboard, normally for keyboard and mouse, the drivers are pre-installed. The Windows ships almost all the drivers, but in certain scenarios, you might need to install the drivers. In that case, you can find the model number for your particular input devices over here. And obviously, the sound card is also important. If you have got a sound card that is external to the CPU, then you can find out over here. But nowadays, external sound cards are rarely used, and most of the sound cards are pre-built in the motherboard. So the motherboard will ship with this particular drivers. Okay, now we have identified all the drivers that we need to install. We have found out the model number, manufacturer. Now we'll go to Google and search for these drivers. I'll show you the best way to find out the drivers for your particular system. So we'll head to Google. Let's say for the first scenario, you have got laptop or a branded desktop. In that case, as mentioned before, you'll have to mention the brand name of your laptop and the model number, which we have already identified from the system information section. So to do that, you'll type that. Suppose I have got a laptop of Dell XPS 15. Let's say there is particular model number, let's say 9500, drivers. As simple as that. And normally it will be in the first 5 results. You can see over here, this is always go to the system manufacturer's website. So in this case, you can see it's mentioned dell.com. And so this is a safe site to go, and this is the driver download section. And you can see normally nowadays what happens is the system manufacturers have got tools which you can install in your Windows system, and that will automatically identify the devices for you and install the drivers. That's completely automated using these tools by the system manufacturer. You can either do that, or in my case, I usually do not install these because I know which particular device drivers I want to install. So instead of automating that process, you can manually get hold of the drivers by going in this section over here and then clicking on this find drivers. And you can see over here, show all. These are all the drivers for this particular laptop model, and it can categorize it based on different devices. Like you can see, there are drivers for BIOS, that is your motherboard, chipset, basically CPU. Chipset drivers are CPU drivers, and these are some input drivers, some network wireless drivers, so video drivers. So let's say if we go for video, and you can see over here, these are the different video cards that ship with this particular model. It can be this case that we have got a laptop model which ships a different graphic card for the same model. In that case, you have to identify a particular graphic card model number as we did in our system information section. Graphic card details are also available in the task manager. To check that out, right click on the taskbar and select task manager. And over here, you can go in performance, and then in GPU, you will see it's listed your particular graphic card, NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 Super. So that way you can identify your graphic card. That is the second way to identify your graphic card. So whatever the graphic card drivers are there, you can go to that, and then you can click on the download button. And then normally an exe file will get downloaded like this over here. So once this gets downloaded, you can simply run it like a normal setup file, Windows setup file, and it will install it. Suppose you have got an old laptop and that particular laptop did not update its drivers for Windows 10 or 11. In that case, what you can do is you can download the Windows 7 drivers and try to install that in your Windows 10 system. Normally, the drivers do get installed, but there might be some minor issues with that particular driver since it's not made for Windows 10 or 11. To install a Windows 7 driver on Windows 11, let's say this is the driver which is only available for Windows 7. To install it in Windows 10 or 11 system, right click and go on properties and then go on compatibility and select run this program in compatibility mode, and then select your particular version for which this particular driver is designed for. So let's say this particular driver is only for Windows 7, so we'll run this particular program with Windows 7 compatibility, and then click apply and start this particular exe file. If that doesn't work, we can then go for manual driver installation. Now we'll continue with our driver finding task. This is the Google search query that you need to type when you want to find the drivers for a particular laptop. Basically, you have to type your brand name. It can be anything Dell, HP, or anything like Acer, followed by a model number, XPS, and then driver. And then go to the top 5 results and check which is the system manufacturer website link, and go to that website and you'll get the drivers for a particular system laptop model or branded desktop model. Now let's look at the case where you have got a desktop system which is an assembled system built by a third party, or you have yourself assembled it. In either case, what you have to do is, first, as we have noted down the motherboard model number, what we'll do is we'll type the motherboard name MSI B450 Tomahawk Max 2 and then drivers, because most of the drivers are linked to the motherboard for a desktop system which is a assembled system. So we'll get maximum amount of drivers over here. You can see this is for my particular system B450, and the BIOS, these are basically firmware. It updates the motherboard firmware in the system. The installation for this is different. In rare scenarios, you need to install the BIOS drivers. Here there is a major security update, or there is some problem that you are facing. In those particular scenarios, you need to install BIOS, and we'll not be covering how to install BIOS because that installation can be a bit tricky compared to a normal system driver installation. Anyway, so now we will look at the drivers by clicking over here drivers, and as you can see, we can select the operating system in this particular site. Let's say we go on Windows 10 drivers. You can see it's divided by various sections. So this is a chipset driver, AMD chipset. This is the AMD graphic cards driver. This is onboard VGA drivers. And then there's a LAN driver and audio driver and SATA driver, RAID. That is if you're using RAID. So all these drivers are present for this particular motherboard, and you can download them, and they are simple exe files. Normally, as mentioned before, the exe files, you simply have to install it like any normal Windows software, and those drivers will get installed on your system. Okay, so this is for the motherboard. Now what happens in assembled system drivers is this chipset drivers over here. You can see the release date for this is quite recent, but normally what happens is the manufacturer, that is your MSI or whatever, motherboard manufacturers do not update the chipset drivers that often. So if that is your case, you can go straight away to your chipset manufacturer. In my case, it is AMD, and from there you can download the chipset driver. And for that, you can search the Google query AMD chipset drivers, and then click the first link, and over here you'll have to select what particular driver category you want. Since in my case I'm looking for chipset, and then you have to select the socket, and it's an AMD AM4 socket, and basically older versions of the motherboard have got AM4, newer versions are AM5. So you have to find out for which particular socket your motherboard has. So we'll select the socket AM4, and in this we can see this is the motherboard model number B450, and we'll click submit, and you can see over here these are the drivers for all the Windows versions. We'll go for Windows 10, and you can see this drivers on AMD's direct website is of 12th October, whereas from the MSI website it's a bit later, like 27th September, and the version number is also a bit newer in this 4.0923.507, and this is 4.07 13.2243. You can see there's a huge gap between the version numbers. So what I would suggest you to directly download those chipset drivers from the AMD website if you've got an AMD chipset, or an Intel website from if you've got an Intel chipset. That way you'll get the latest drivers for your particular chipset. Similarly is the case with the graphic drivers. NVIDIA graphic card drivers are made by different companies. Like I've got a Gigabyte NVIDIA driver. MSI also makes graphic card drivers from NVIDIA. So in that case also, like if I go for Gigabyte NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 Super, you can see we'll go, this is my graphic card, and we'll go in support, and over here driver. You can see in this case the driver version is, this is quite recent, no, it's quite old actually. You can see this is a link that is almost a year old. And if you go to the NVIDIA website, NVIDIA GTX 1660 Super, and we'll go type in drivers, go for the first link, and if we go down, in support drivers, we'll go for manual. GeForce product series is 16 series. Yeah, so this is the particular graphic card from my case, and let's go click start. Okay, in NVIDIA there are two types of graphic drivers, like there are game ready and there is studio driver. I would suggest you download the game ready driver. Normally game ready drivers are good enough. Basically the difference between these two are, game ready drivers are particularly optimized for running games on your graphic card, whereas studio drivers are made for content creators like us for running graphic intensive programs like Adobe Premiere Pro, etc. So depending on your use case, if you are using a graphic card preliminary for video editing, then go for studio drivers, or if you are using your graphic card for games, then go for game ready drivers. And see, and you can see over here, these are the drivers, and this you can see it's released on 12th October, just a week ago, and they see the version number. So that's why I said always go to the system manufacturer. So always go to NVIDIA if your graphic card is from NVIDIA, or if it's an AMD graphic card, then go to the AMD website. And if you have got a Intel graphic card, go to the Intel website. Do not go for the manufacturer who has built that particular graphic card. Like in my case, it's Gigabyte, because in those, on the manufacturer's website, you will find drivers a bit outdated, especially for the chipset and the graphic card. Apart from these two types of drivers, you can go for the system manufacturer's drivers. So that's how you download the drivers for your graphic card and the chipset. The similar process you have to follow for other drivers. Like if you've got a printer, you can search for the printer driver, like typing Canon and the model number. Let's say we had got over here MF440, MF440 here, you can see, and you can type drivers, and you can see MF44. It's not the same driver, but you can get the idea. Basically you have to type the drivers, type the printer model brand and the model number, followed by the keyword driver. And in the most of the scenarios, you will find in the top 5 results of Google the system manufacturer's website, and you simply have to go to the drivers section in the support section. It's usually present in the support area, in the drivers section, and then select the drivers for your particular system, operating system. It can be Windows 10, Windows 7, Windows 8, whatever. You have to select that and get the latest driver. So that's how you do for printers, and the same thing you can do for your audio card. If you've got a separate audio card, and if you've got a Wi-Fi adapter, you can do the same thing like that. Type the Wi-Fi adapter's model number and then download it. Now let's see the troubleshooting scenarios where you have installed the drivers but the device is still not working. So what should we do? In that case, we have to go to the device manager. So simply type in run device manager. In this, if there is a device that you have installed and the drivers are malfunctioning or not working, or your device is not getting detected properly, over here you will see the device with an exclamation mark. In my case, since all the drivers are installed properly, there is no such particular case. But let's say, for example, my display driver is malfunctioning. So in this display adapter in NVIDIA, you will see an exclamation mark over here, right over here. And if you check that out in the status, it will say the device has stopped working because of XYZ reason. So that is one kind of fault in your particular device. The other fault can happen when drivers for a particular device has not installed only. In that case, your device will not be listed in particular category, but it will be listed in unknown device in the device manager. And in either of the cases, what you have to do is you have to simply right click it and select uninstalled device, and then you have to go in file, you have to go in action and click on add legacy hardware, and then click on next. So this is the way of how to install drivers manually. So we'll select, I'm assuming that you have got the drivers for your particular device, and that particular driver is not provided in an exe format, but an INF file is provided. In that particular case, you can follow this method of manually installing drivers. And to do that, you can see there are two options here. We'll go for the second option, install the hardware. I manually select from a list, click next, select show all devices, select have disk, click on have disk, and click over here. You have to go to the area where you downloaded the INF file for a particular driver. So let's say we go for this INF file, okay, and you can see in this particular INF file these three drivers are present. These are basically for Android USB ADB connection. This I had to do because there was a driver malfunction in the fastboot drivers, and using this particular manual installation, I was able to get rid of that particular error. So basically you have to select the drivers from this list depending on your device, and then click next. When you do that, the Windows will manually install the drivers that is present in that particular INF file. And if the driver device is successfully installed, the exclamation mark will vanish, and then you will see the device properly categorized according to the type of the hardware. So that is how you troubleshoot your devices. And one other way of troubleshooting the device is going over here and uninstalling the device by clicking on install device. Make sure to select this, delete the driver software for this device. Once you do that and then click uninstall, the particular device driver will be uninstalled permanently, and then you can reinstall a different version of that particular driver. That is the other way of reinstalling a driver, by deleting the currently installed drivers. And you can force a device check for new devices by clicking on this scan button over here, scan for new hardware changes. So this will identify if there are new devices that are plugged to your system, and if there are some new devices detected, it will try to install the drivers depending on the drivers that are installed on your Windows system. So these are basic tasks of a device manager. I hope friends you like this video. If yes, smack that like button. Share this video with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel howisolved.com. You'll find more such informative technology related videos, tips and tricks, and much more. Hit that bell icon to get notified as soon as we release a new video. Thanks for watching friends. This is Neil signing off. Bye bye.